to the Between the Pages podcast. Today we are going to do Choices 2. A few weeks ago we went over choices. It wasn't a one because there was only one. And then we got a lot of good response from it and feedback, and so we have another point of choices 2.
Yeah, when we did choices 1, the one about the lemons and sowing and reaping and harvest and that, it was way unexpected that we would have the response that we received. It was like, wow.
I think it's our most watched video.
Yeah, it's tens of thousands of people watched it and provided absolutely good feedback on it. And so we had an experience recently, Sarah and I. We went to a financial presentation at a church, community church. It was okay.
The basis of it was that, if you have a business and you're a Christian, we're going to show you how to build your business in a Christian, atmosphere, to make sure. And so it seemed good.
Yeah, it was a good concept. Don't take anything away from it. I mean, it's probably what most Christians think and believe. So it's probably not anything wrong with that. And so not here to judge any of that in any way. But what I don't think most people realize is there's just actually two systems out there. And so what we want to do today is we put together a little PowerPoint, and I'm going to step through some of that PowerPoint to share with you, the two systems. So we're going to share screen here, and
getting better at this as the days
getting better at it. Yeah, we're
good. This one?
Yeah, that's the one, and voila. And I think that's it. Yeah. So give me the toy.
You want me to do the layout like we did for choices?
Well, you can do that in editing, right?
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so the two systems. Basically, you have two systems. I don't think it's clear to people that there are two systems. And so
I've only ever heard one other person talk about the two systems aside from you.
Oh, really?
Out in the world, I've only ever heard one person say something. I was like, oh, wow. Look at you.
Well, I think, a lot of people right now, especially in the financial climate we're in, I think people are struggling. And I'm not so sure they realize why they're struggling.
Yeah.
And so this presentation is hopefully something that's going to help them come to terms with that. And at least it's better if you understand why something's happened to you.
Then you can make adjustments to fix it.
Yeah, then you can change course or not.
Yeah.
If you're happy with what you're doing and that kind of thing. But one of the most valuable commodity that you have is, of all the things that you have, think, oh no, my portfolio's valuable, my home, my car, people, and then it's not to say that those things aren't valuable, but the most valuable thing is time. And so a lot of people spend their time in pursuits that don't produce anything. They're not productive. Okay, at least like in our example, when we plant a tomato seed, a tomato plant comes up, and we reap the harvest of bountiful harvest, hopefully, of tomatoes, and more than what we planted. And so there's no real benefit to, and this is just an example. What's the benefit of a video game? When I was growing up, they had these things called arcades, and you would go there and you'd put a quarter in there in the arcade or the jukebox, the pinball machines or whatever, and you'd play, and then the time would run out and your quarter would be gone. And what do you get to do? You get to log the fact that you was high scorer or something, or try again or whatever, but you didn't do anything productive. You didn't do anything to help yourself move forward. And so it's not that you have time. You have time just like everyone else has. It's like, well, how are you spending your time?
Yeah.
That's the question you should be asking yourself, and that probably was going to lead you back to why you're in the situation you're in. And so what you should be basically doing is asking yourself, if I keep doing what I'm doing, and only you can answer this question because I can't answer it for you, is in 5 years, am I going to be, is my situation going to be any different than it is now?
Yeah.
I mean, if I keep doing what I'm doing now, general answer would be, no, you're going to be just like you are now. And so the only way, if you're not happy about or content or whatever with your lot currently, and you want to have something different, well, you might want to think about doing something different. Yeah. And so then the question becomes, well, what is it that I want to do? Now, if you're content with where you are and what you're doing, then, stop the video, go do something else, okay? Because this isn't for you. You're already okay, okay? But, if you're kind of curious about, what I'm going to say, then you might want to stick around just so you can have the other point of view, right? The other perspective on this. And that's not to say that my perspective is the only perspective, but what I'm going to show you is interesting, to say the least. At least it is to me. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and move along. Big reveal. Open the door. Okay, so this is our agenda. And so we always like to start out with a Bible scripture or something, but, we did the introduction, you got to ask, this lantern that comes from Mabel and Abel are praying in the barn, their voices up to God.
Let me show the little innuendos into the books.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so the thing is that you have to ask, and, ask, seek, knock. And so I said, well, ask, seek, find, and then, we'll have a kind of a summary towards the end. But I took this scripture out of the Bible, Matthew chapter 7, 7 through 11, I think. And when I found it, I was like, oh, 7-Eleven, I wonder if that's where the convenience store chain came from. It's like, you need to inquire. If you don't inquire with God, then what you're going to do is you're going to do what the world does most probably. And so that's why I say, that's why I like this template, if you will, is showing the wood being cut. It's gonna cut this piece of wood into 2 pieces. And so you're going to have a choice. You can go with the world, or you can go with a more biblical view of the 2 systems. And so I just say, looking at this, read the fine print. There's a chart here, there's a scripture here. Read what it says, internalize what it says, and let that be what helps you make your decision. Don't listen, just say, oh, Jimmy Bright said this. No. Go check it out for yourself, okay? So, by way of introduction, I am not a financial advisor. Okay, and I am not giving you financial advice, and I don't know why I felt, compelled to put this in here because,
this is just us talking, and you guys are listening.
I'm explaining to you the 2 systems from a biblical point of view.
Yeah. And
so you can take it for what it's worth, okay? And some people may think it's not worth anything, and so others will. But as we mentioned, we had a recent church experience. I went to a church.
That's what it was.
Yeah. It was at a church.
It was at a church, and it was Christians talking about money, basically.
Money and making money, earning money, or whatever.
Even though they tried to make it like Bible studies and things, all of the topics were how to, grow.
Yeah. And, there's the techniques and the methods that they use. They probably work. I don't know. I don't know any of the people. I don't know their lives. I don't know anything. I saw them on a stage at a presentation.
Yeah.
And so I'm not judging any of that. But what I'm saying is okay, there's 2 views here. There's a world view and there's a God view. And so you might want to think about, doing as well as, we'll just say the Joneses. For instance, people always comparing themselves to someone else. Oh, I could be doing like they're doing, or I could be like them. Well, most of the people that you think are rich, they're just like you. They're just what I call broke at a higher level. Okay, you're doing well. What they're in is a system that's a debt-based system that manages to make it so that they can afford their lifestyle. And I remember there was a commercial several years ago about a guy riding around on a lawnmower in his yard, just smiling and happy. I'm broke. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. Kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah. And that's where most people are. They just in a debt-based system makes a slave out of you. And the only people who can free people from slavery are people who are free. Free people who are in bondage. If you're a slave to credit cards or a slave to debt, then you're never going to be free. You're going to need someone else to help you get free. And I know that's kind of a hard thing to understand, but if you're a slave to credit cards and debt, and you think that somehow or another you're going to be able to work it out yourself, you're probably wrong about that. I remember walking to the grocery store on a path one day, and that's what a job is. A job is a situation where you're just over the people that you're working for, and there's nothing wrong with jobs. Jobs are a good thing. You need a job. You need to provide for your family. I'm not saying jobs are bad. I'm just saying the people who you work for and with, they're just going to pay you enough to keep you coming back. Because if they paid you what you were worth, you'd never come back. You'd work 30 minutes and you'd be done for life because in God's eyes, your value is, well, He sent His Son to die on the cross for you. That's how valuable you are to Him. And that's a pretty big price. So, but jobs don't pay at that level, okay? And so when I was walking, a job is like a path. I was walking to the grocery store as a kid one day, the same old path, and so many people walk that path. You just walk across the street and walk to I think it was a food town or something like that. And you'd walk across the street, go in the store, get your groceries, come back, and you walk back on the same path. And there was grass on either side of the path, and then there was this dirt path, And I looked down, and there was a $20 bill laying on the ground. I'm like, wow. And I looked around, there was nobody there. So somebody had dropped it at some point, and they weren't looking for it. And so I took it home. Mom was glad to get it. But the thing is when I found that $20 bill, it's like I didn't realize what that was. And what a $20 bill is, it's just a portion of a person's life. They took their time at a job or some other endeavor to earn $20. And that was their time that was stored up in that $20 bill. And then they choose to take that $20 bill and exchange it for goods, services, or whatever. But that, in a sense, is where most people are. They're taking their time and they're exchanging their time for dollars. And, that's the system. That's what we currently have. And that's the system that you get to live with. So if you're happy with that system, like I say, just turn this off and stop watching. If you want to know more, hang around.
Yep.
Okay, we overcome that little difficulty. Okay, so what you have to be willing to do is to ask. Okay, so why am I? It's the eternal question. Probably been
Why
asked,
are you here?
Why are you here?
You ended up on this YouTube channel for a reason.
I'm here today for whatever reason. I'm here. I had an experience at a church, and now I thought I might want to talk about it. But what I have found is most people don't plan to fail. They just fail to plan. And someone else said this before me, and I don't know who to give credit to, but I'm sure there's some other person out there that's like, that's my quote. And to that person, salute. But you just don't plan.
Yeah.
And,
And then it's like also planning and never needing to use your plan is like, it's a good thing.
Here you are stuck in the system you're in and getting the results you're getting, but you don't understand why.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to change course. Okay, so what am I doing wrong? Well, there are basically two systems, and two paths, if you will. And so I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. But if you're not happy where you are, then perhaps maybe you are doing something wrong. That's all I'm saying. And so if you're asking yourself those kinds of questions, then, how do I change? You need to ask. You need to seek. You need to knock. You need to go out and you need to go take a real introverted type look at yourself and where you are and the situation you're in. That's the thing with one of the aspects of this is Kismet. And that was what
which is one of the new books coming
new
out.
books. It'll be out like December. It's ready.
Yeah.
It's real close. But we thought we'd take this time to introduce you, pull the curtain back, meet Kate and Buck. This is them. They're out there. They're just a couple kids, happy-go-lucky. They're out there on the train track, and there's a train coming up, and they're just oblivious to it. And I think that's the way most people live their lives. They're just completely oblivious to this financial situation that they're in, and don't realize there's some event coming, and I don't know what that event is, but I know this: it's not anything that's unusual. It happens to everyone. Yeah. Something happens. You're gonna need time, money, friends. Well, I made that so that it would go like a clock. The average lifespan is 4,000 weeks. For some people, it's a little more than that, and for some people, it's a little less than that. Okay? So, what you got to think about is, where am I in the 4,000 week event? Fortunately today we have calculators, so what you do is you just take the number of years you've been alive and multiply it by 52, because that's the number of weeks in a year. And so it'll tell you, and then you can subtract, I have X number of weeks left, because there are no do-overs. There's no going back, and the weeks that you've already spent, they're spent. And you've got the results. You're living those results right now. You're living you're reaping the harvest of the previous weeks that you've spent. Yeah, so this is choices. You're making a choice. So ask yourself, what are you doing with your time, and is it time well spent? Most of the people who are in a better situation than you are have only spent their time doing something different than what you're doing. Spent their time being productive. Okay? And so you've got two results from that. You're going to build up treasure on earth and treasure in heaven. And regardless of what your belief system is, you're going to give an account for both of those. You're going to give an account for the treasure that you've built here and what you did with it, and you're going to, depending on what you did with it, you're going to build up treasure in earth, and you're going to give an account for that. And some of the treasure that you generate in heaven will be gold, silver, precious jewels, and the other of it will be hay, wood, and stubble. And so, but either way, that's what's going to happen. So these two here in the transition, they Buck made me think about, well, he just kicks up his heels. They're just like, they don't care. And so time just flies away. I love that little origami thing where it flies away. Your time's just flying away. The time's flying away right now, just clicking off. And basically, what money is you're trading your hours for dollars. In this particular case, I said, well, okay, I'll just look at, these different denominations. A penny consists of 0.75 cents, but it takes 4 cents to make it. Well, that's a loss on your investment. I don't know how the government continues to print pennies. But if you look at the commodities that are in them, they're reasonable, but the amount of time and effort it takes to make them is not. And I understand there's a lot of things associated with pennies, and the fact that, if you didn't have pennies, it'd probably round up, and that would affect people who are in the lower system economically adversely. The same thing happens with nickels. 11 cents is what the material cost, and that's well above the face value of the nickel, and so forth. And so, fortunately, the government makes it up on dimes and quarters. But this is what it is today. By this time next year, the way inflation's going, these numbers will be totally different. So that's why we put the data down in the bottom left-hand corner, 2025. So moving forward, okay. So you have a fear and greed system versus a tried and true system. Okay, so I think everybody's pretty much familiar with the fear and greed system. And, the stock market, that's the way it works. You got your money in stocks, more power to you. If you're happy with that, I personally never owned any stock, ever. And I never even had a 401k up until this last job I got, and they signed me up involuntarily. And so I've never owned a 401k, I've never owned stock. And the reason why is because I don't really trust anyone other than me with my money. But, you're different. And so what they've done is they've done a pretty good job of convincing you that the Babylonian system works better than the Abrahamic system. And I'm here to prove that incorrect. Okay, and now how I'm going to do it is I'm going to take a simple example of wages. Okay, and I fortunately had my granddaughter was here visiting, and she was able to help me with this. I mean, she loves this kind of stuff. So, wages, 1964. Now, some of you guys may recognize this, and some of you may not, but the minimum wage in 1964 was $1.25 an hour. I went and looked it up, and this is what it told me. So I'm thinking, I wasn't working in 1964. I was 6 years old. So, but the equivalent wage today, and this is probably 2023 or 2024 number, would be like $10.50. And so that just tells you about the comparison. If you're working for hourly wage, which most people are, then you should be making at least $10.50. But is that the true story? Is that the true thing? I can remember, I liked Andy Griffith's show, and I used to watch it. And the thing is there's this episode in there, Mr. McBeevy. And it's by far, Pickles episode #1 with me. I don't know how the rest of you are. I love that one. But the second favorite was Mr. McBeevy. And the reason I like Mr. McBeevy is, Opie has a kind of an overactive imagination. I suppose that's where I get it from, and that's why I'm able to write these books. Oh, yeah. But OAI. And so, Mr. McBeevy gives him a quarter for helping him out. He brought him water, brought him berries for him to eat. And so he gives him a quarter, and he gives him a nice shiny quarter. And that quarter is 90% silver. Now, Opie is all over it about that quarter, because back then a quarter would actually buy something. Okay? I mean, a quarter, if you're paying your kid to do chores and you're giving them a quarter for that, then what you should actually do is, for the work they're doing, give them a $10 bill. Because that 1964 quarter, based on the silver content, is worth $10. Just on the silver content alone, not counting the fact that it might actually have some other type of value. Okay? And so that's what we want to hope to demonstrate. The other thing that I really love about Mr. McBeevy is Andy. He's the father figure in the story. And Opie's telling him this story about Mr. McBeevy with all these hands. But he jingles, and he has a shiny hat and all this kind of stuff. And Andy's ready to, discipline him, but he doesn't, because he believes in the son more than he does in what the son's telling him. Even though he can't see what the son is telling him, he believes in what the son is telling him. And a parallel between, we all have a father, he has a son, and there's a spirit, and we can't see that spirit, and we believe in that spirit. Great show. So, I don't want to get too choked up about it. Those silver quarters in the second picture, you can see they're all silver. At the end of the day, 5 silver quarters at 90% silver is about 1 point something ounces of silver. As of the video that we're currently filming, an ounce of silver is going for about $52 an ounce. So that means those 5 quarters there are worth $52. So if your hourly wage isn't $52 an hour, somebody's ripping you off. Because back in the day, when somebody worked for $1.25, they got an ounce of silver, that had real purchasing power. So that $10.50 an hour wage, this is why you can't get ahead. Your purchasing ability has been lowered. Now, that's $52 for 1 hour. By the end of the day, you would have had 8 of those stacks. And so what I did is I put together 8 stacks. Some of them are $half, some of them are dimes, some of them are quarters, that kind of thing. And that pile that you see over there to the right is a single day's wages in silver, which is what you used to get paid in 1964. I can't remember the last time I got a paycheck that was either mailed to my house or whatever. I can't remember, getting paid in silver. I can't, but when you were fired, or the more political term these days is laid off or something of that nature, then you would go to the cashier window and they would pay you your wages right there at the window and send you on your way. And they would pay you in dollars, which were usually silver certificates or gold certificates, and they would pay you in coinage, which was usually silver. Dollars, $half have silver content, dimes have silver content, quarters have silver content. Even like 1942, 43, 44, nickels have silver content, 35% silver. And so they stopped making those during the war. But the point of all this is those were real wages. Okay? And so that's a single day. This is your week. Meet my model. Say hi to Jimmy Bright, okay? Day 1, my quality assurance evaluator, she loves silver. She loves the sound of it. She loves the feel of it. So I got her to model this for me. So she put a single day's wages in her hands. And during the book in Kismet, they realize that time is money and it's going by. And the book shows them in God's hands just like this. And this is why I chose this pose, is to show you, you're in God's hands. You're not in someone else's hands. If you're a Christian, He sees you. He knows what you're worth, and He knows what you should be paid. But you choose to get something different. So day 1, day 2, day 3. If you see the progression there. Now, the interesting little part of this is there's 6 days there, y'all. And the reason there's 6 days there is 6 days thou shalt work. Okay? And so I have always worked 6 days. Ever since I became a Christian, I work 6 days. I don't work 4 days. If you're going to work 4 days, if you're a proponent of the 4-day work week, you might want to stop watching this now, because you're just cutting your wages. And on top of that, you not keeping the instruction. Okay, so a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. The 7th day is a day of rest. Well, I figure you owe somebody $240 because there's $240 for the week. I mean, $2,400 for the week. A tithe, which is the accepted thing, is 10%. I actually think a tithe is more like 25%, so I think a fourth of it ought to be going to kingdom pursuits. Whether that's your church or missionary work or giving money to the Goodwill or the food pantry or whatever your thing is. I mean, I'm not here to dictate any of that. That's about, a fourth of your income should go to that. I know people who give 90% of their income to God, so more power to them. I'm not at that level, but I do give a lot of money away, as you're going to find out here later. But that leaves you $2,160 to pay your debts with for the week. You wonder why you can't afford a nice car? You wonder why you can't have a house? You wonder why your kids don't get the best education? You wonder why this, that, or the other? There it is right there. If you're making $2,160 a week, now, other little part, there's Sam. He wants his share of your $2,160. But assuming he takes a third of it, you're still going to have $1,400 a week left for groceries, medical, education, home, energy for the week. Usually there's 4 weeks in a month. That means you're going to be making somewhere in the neighborhood of about $6,000 to $7,000 after taxes and after God, or maybe not in that order, but that's the way they do it. I say after God, after taxes. But whatever. So that's what you're looking at. That's my model, okay?